Welcome into the Tech Ed Podcast. It is Matt Kirkner, and it is another week talking about higher education in this case, but also about artificial intelligence, which is a topic that comes up regularly on the Tech Ed Podcast. However, not often with somebody who's been an absolute pioneer in the world of artificial intelligence education. I can say that about today's guest. He is an individual who has been so far out in front, he and his team, on AI, working on talking about artificial intelligence before many of us even knew it was a thing. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it's like to lead an iconic engineering and technical university in the form of the Milwaukee School of Engineering. And we are doing that with that organization's president. His name is Dr. John Walz. I've gotten to know him over the course of the last year. Fascinating, brilliant person. So proud and happy to have you in person in the studio here at the Tech Ed Podcast. John, thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Matt. I appreciate the comments. Thank you. It's
Absolutely.
Great.
And I mean every one of them. I mean, we think about being early on and an early adopter of artificial intelligence learning in the field of higher education. And you just can't say enough about the leadership position that MSOE has had in that regard. You joined Carnegie Mellon, a pretty good company right there.
Yeah. That's where I went to grad school as well. So
did you really?
It has a special meaning for me for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So join them as one of the first two universities in the nation to offer an undergraduate degree focused on artificial intelligence. So tell us a little bit about that. What did you see in this market, John, that nobody else was seeing at the time you started this?
So what we had is, I describe it as a great mix of opportunity meets need.
Okay.
And a lot of our corporate partners at the time were telling us, we would like MSOE to offer a degree in computer science. We did not have a computer science degree. We had something called software engineering, which is a little bit different, but somewhat related, but not computer science. Pretty much around the same time, we had this magnificent opportunity presented to us by Dwight Derricks and his wife, Diane, to provide a building to us and a supercomputer, which is great for artificial intelligence work. And that is when we said, we can do something distinctive here. We can make a computer science degree, not a vanilla computer science degree, but one that is focused on artificial intelligence. So that is when students come out, they know that. And that's what we decided to do. And that has been an enormous success. And so we could have done it anyway, but what Dwight did for us, it would have been that much harder to do. Just to get that level of resources from us has made a difference, but we could also meet the needs of our industrial partners at the same time.
And we're going to get into the whole partnership with Dwight Derricks and his wife, Diane, and the great things that they're doing for the benefit of your students, for the benefit of our community here in Southeast Wisconsin. Before we do that, though, John, would be curious to know this. As you're getting this thing stood up, as you have this incredible vision, what is the trick to getting so far ahead of everybody else?
I think there are three things that happened. Number one, like we said, we had this great gift from Dwight and his wife, Diane. That gave us the machine, that gave us a building. We had a software engineering degree. So, and like I said, there are some similarities there. So we didn't have to go out and hire a dozen new faculty. We had people that could start teaching the courses while we hired. We did have to do some hiring.
Sure.
And the other advantage is there's a certain advantage to being a small private school. You can be nimble.
Right.
And I've worked, nothing against large public schools. I've worked at them. But we could basically envision a computer science degree, a new degree, and get it approved and get it ready within 4 months. And that, being small and private, allowed us to do that. So all of those things came together and allow us to get out ahead of this stuff.
And as somebody who spends a lot of time in higher education and even innovating, in a public setting, in a large university, sometimes even in a private university, can take years. I mean, you think about some of the things that happen to get, whether we're creating a new degree program and maybe different state universities arguing about who gets to have that, how we're going to get it funded, in some cases even going to a board of regents on a statewide basis, these kind of things. And here you are in this, you say small private university. I mean, a number of students at MSOE.
So if you count everybody, we have some mainly undergraduates, some graduates. I'd say 2,700, 2,800. Sure. That's pretty much where we are.
Absolutely, and allows you to be incredibly nimble. I can tell as somebody that's been involved with MSOE for several decades, as a matter of fact. First of all, very, very nimble, very, very flexible, incredibly responsible to your corporate citizens and your partners in a way that I think a lot of times in higher education, not that that gets lost, but you tend to serve a lot of different masters, if you will. In your particular case, so responsive to the needs of your corporate partners, which is really, really important. As you stand up this degree program, you create these opportunities for your students. Now, we've got a lot of folks in higher education, whether it's technical community colleges, universities, graduate programs, PhD programs, and so on, trying to figure out what to teach when it comes to artificial intelligence. So let's talk about that. If I'm a student that's part of this program, what specifically am I learning?
Yeah, so one of the distinctive things about MSOE, and it was that way since we were founded in 1903, it's an application-focused degree. Our students learn by doing. So with all of our degrees, our students probably spend more time in laboratories and hands-on work than you will find at any other type of institution. But they still have to know the fundamentals, right? If you're going to use and be a computer science graduate with a focus in AI, you have to understand what AI and machine learning is. But what sets us apart is it's the application of it, not simply know what it is, but how do I use it? So our students in all of their classes, how do I take that tool and apply it to different areas, what I can do with it? And that's really what sets our graduates apart and why companies love to hire from MSOE, because when they come out, they're ready to go. They know how to use that.
So it's certainly the theory, it's the coding, it's the programming, but more important, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with this now that I know it? We talk so often about what I call the edge to cloud continuum, this whole idea that we've got smart sensors and devices on the edge, we've got cloud computing, and then that continuum really repeats itself over and over, whether it's our smartphone, whether it's manufacturing, healthcare, defense, retail, hospitality. Every single market space has these applications for artificial intelligence.
Right.
And so as I'm hearing your students are learning not just the theory behind it, not just the technical side of AI, which is important, but then how am I going to apply this in the marketplace, which makes them incredibly valuable to your corporate partners, correct?
Exactly right. And we see that with the number of companies and the type of companies that are hiring our students. It's just getting students in that area in particular. They're not just going to, maybe your traditional, the ones that you would think of that's going to hire computer science graduates or students with that. We're seeing manufacturing companies, we're seeing healthcare companies, we're seeing construction companies, financial services companies, all need people with that skill. And I think that's going to continue to grow. It's really a great market for these students, whether they want to stay here in Wisconsin, which is great, or sometimes, the appeal of going off to the coast is there for a bit as well. And I'm like, go for it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're big believers in show them the world, but show them what's here as well and let them make the best possible decision for themselves. In terms of making great decisions, specific to your students, as I think I know several of your vice presidents, Eric and Saj, are both great friends.
Yeah.
And both of them have talked to me about students going off and kind of starting their own AI club. Is that something that I should be more familiar with?
A group of our students got together a few years ago and formed an AI club.
Yeah.
It is open to any student, right? Not just computer science majors. It has over 200 members. It is the largest club at our university that didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago. And it's really to do things, people that have an interest in this field. They work on projects together. They meet. Some of them do research for the faculty. So that is really one of the things that we're very excited about, is interest in that field is really broadening beyond just the computer folks, right? It's the other engineers. We love eventually to get our nursing students, our business students more involved in that. So the AI club is a very significant club on our campus.
And that's when you're hitting the right spot, when the students take it upon themselves to create this opportunity, when, we've got probably maybe a certain paradigm about data science, computer programmers, those students, and then opening it up beyond that to, hey, it's not just about the coding and the programming. It's all these applications. It's in every single market space. In as much as your school is the Milwaukee School of Engineering, it's not just engineers, as you touched on, right? What other academic programs are students?
That is correct. So we're about 80% engineering, 10% business, 10% nursing. And in engineering, computer science, construction management, I kind of lump all those in together, but all that focus. But our name belies us a little bit. We're not strictly an engineering school. We're as Saj, you mentioned Saj, sometimes he says, Milwaukee School of more than just engineering.
There you
That's
go.
what
Nice.
I like to do, and I
Yeah.
love that term, right?
I love that too. It might be a little bit too many letters to stick into the MSOE moniker.
Doesn't work on a sweatshirt very well. But.
Exactly right. You're recruiting students into the programs. Obviously, the academic rigor, the opportunity for a really lively campus life, the opportunity to join clubs like the AI Club, and then what comes after undergraduate education as you're recruiting students and talking about the career programs and opportunities, particularly that flow out of this AI world. You touched on some of them. You talked about finance. You talked about healthcare.
Yeah.
Wait, what's the message to those students? Where can they go with a degree like this?
They can go almost anywhere now, and if it's not there now, it will be in the future. I mean, this is a field that it is the transformative technology. It is what digital computers were, when we were in school, when I was in school, and the computers came out. I think it's just getting adopted more and more by a broader range of companies. So like I said, what we're seeing now is every type of industry that typically recruits students will be recruiting people who have that skill. One of our goals is that it's not just the computer scientists who know how to use that. We'd love to be able to get to the point that, yes, my degree is in electrical engineering, but I know how to use AI. My degree is in civil engineering, but I know how to use AI, because I think eventually that's what companies are going to want, even in nursing, right? I mean, the idea that you have a nursing student or a business person who says, yes, I know the fundamentals, but I can apply that technology to my field. I think that's where eventually it's going to get to. The major industries, they all recruit students from us who know how to use that, and I think that's going to continue.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And we're seeing it, not just eventually, but I think we're even seeing that now where employers, if we think about here in Southeast Wisconsin, some of the great companies, really, really well-known companies, we've got tons of small to mid-sized businesses, but then we've got companies like a Harley Davidson or an SC Johnson or Northwestern Mutual or Baird or, one of our great healthcare providers like Freighter. I mean, so many of these different institutions that are looking for people that understand how to apply AI. And then we've got huge companies. So let's talk about maybe NVIDIA as a good way of segueing into our next topic.
Okay.
And you mentioned Dwight Dirk's name earlier in the discussion. Who's that person? I know who it is, but tell our audience.
So Dwight is a 1990 graduate of MSOE. His degree was in computer engineering. He started out working for a company down in Texas called Compaq.
Sure.
And if those of you remember, Compaq made the first portable computer.
I had one,
which was about the size of a suitcase, right?
It was, and you carried it like a suitcase too.
So portable was a different name then, but that's where he started. And he worked for them for a number of years, and then he moved on. He had another company, but then he ended up working with a small startup out in the Bay Area called NVIDIA. He was employee number 22 from NVIDIA. At the time, I mean, it was not clear they were going to make it. NVIDIA, their big product was graphics cards for computer games.
Yeah.
They were a gaming company.
Right.
And they could do that really well, and that's where there's their business. And so when we first met Dwight and when this came on the scene, gaming was still their biggest product at the time.
Yeah.
And then at some point, somebody realized that these cards, which can work so well with computer graphics, can also be applied to artificial intelligence, and specifically a type of it called machine learning.
Yep.
And that's when the world just took off for them. Right. And so, if you followed NVIDIA stock, it has just blown up, and it was really that discovery that these cards, so I think they still probably are into gaming to a degree, but clearly this application on machine learning and AI is really what's driven that company. So Dwight's a tremendous person. He and his wife, Diane, he grew up in Red Wing, Minnesota.
Yep.
His father was a farmer. I think he raised pigs, but he's a very humble guy, and he loves MSOE, and we're just very proud of him.
Yeah, by coincidence, the second conversation I've had already this morning on Red Wing, Minnesota, because I had a meeting this morning with Ron Wanick, who's the founder and chairman of Ashley Furniture Industries. I grew up in Winona, but we were talking about Red Wing. So that's a great area just south of Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. And what a blessing for MSOE to be in this relationship with a former student who's on the ground floor of what's been certainly from a market cap standpoint, the fastest growing company in the world here for the last several years, and truly the backbone and the infrastructure of everything. And so much that's happening in artificial intelligence, and all the data centers are using NVIDIA technology as we're just computing and processing tremendous amounts of data. Yeah. And here you've got this former student who's on the ground floor in this organization and has done so much for the Milwaukee School of Engineering. Now, I was actually in attendance when you opened Dwight and Diane Dirk's computational Science Hall.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
Okay,
I was
I
there.
didn't know that.
You had a big open house.
We did.
And it was pre-COVID, of course. And so we kind of remember everything about, everything in the last several years when it happened relative to COVID. But I had the opportunity to be there, and I was just blown away. I mean,
it was great. It's a great day for us.
Incredible. 5-year anniversary. I mean, my goodness.
It's hard to believe, but it was 2019 when we opened that building, and it was a full-day celebration. Dwight was there with his family. Jensen Huang, the president of CEO of NVIDIA, came by for that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little anecdote about it. So at the end of the day, Dwight and Jensen, they were in Derrick's Hall, and they were going to sign autographs for the students.
Yeah.
And what a great opportunity.
For sure.
And MSOE students, being who they are, what they were doing, many of them would go back to their dorm room, they would open up their computer, they would take out their NVIDIA graphics card, and they would bring it back and have Dwight and Jensen sign their NVIDIA graphics
cool
card.
is
And I
that?
thought Jensen just loved that.
I bet. Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So it was a great day.
Yeah,
Great
so
day.
tell us about everything that's going on there. I mean, it's right, for the people who don't know, pretty much right in downtown Milwaukee, just north of kind of the center of downtown. It's a focal piece, a showpiece for the Milwaukee School of Engineering. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's a great building. It is the home of our departments, of our programs in computer science and software engineering. It has a supercomputer in it called Rosie, an NVIDIA supercomputer. It's really the jewel box of that. I mean, we love that machine. It
sits behind these big windows.
Sits behind this big window with the name Rosie on it.
Yep.
It's built to be a very student-friendly building. So there's a lot of study space, whether a student wants to just study on their own, whether they want to study with a partner, whether they want to have a group. There's little rooms that they can reserve and go in there and study. So it's a place that students want to be and faculty want to be. In fact, we've had some of our students who've said, I came to you because I really love that building.
Yeah.
And that's great for us. And companies use it. We have corporate events. There's a company in town called SysLogic, which every year holds their cybersecurity company. They hold their meeting there. So it's really a great example, in my opinion, of what a great facility can do for an institution, not just attracting students and faculty and staff, but also just having industrial relationships and supporting our students. So it's a great building. We're very proud of it.
And I can attest to everything you're saying, having spent a fair amount of time there. Number one, walking in there, huge open spaces. It really is, when you think about the future of higher education and the opportunity for students to interact and to learn from each other. And we're not sitting in little cubicles, nice, big, beautiful, open area, well lit, gigantic windows on the outside. It's really stunning. I had the opportunity last summer to serve on a panel during Summerfest Tech, which is something that happens here in Wisconsin. Yep. Every summer around technology, and you hosted that particular event at Derrick's Hall as well. So just absolutely, absolutely amazing. And then you mentioned Rosie, the supercomputer.
Yeah.
And you can't miss it. I mean, it is, when you think about supercomputer, not just in terms of processing power, but in terms of the size of that thing.
Right.
And looking through these beautiful windows. Tell us a little bit more about Rosie. I read recently that it's processed 150,000 jobs.
Yeah,
now,
that's very possible. I didn't know that. And that's a great number to hear. First of all, I want to say, why she's named Rosie, which is a question we get a lot.
For sure.
There's two reasons. There's the formal reason, which is the first computer programmers in this country were women. And it was during World War II, and they were doing calculations of missile trajectories for the war, and men were at the war. And somebody wrote an article about that group of Rosies, like Rosie the Riveter, but these are Rosie the programmers. And there's an image that we have that we show in the building of those early programmers. And so Rosie is named in honor of those. And the second reason, which is not such a formal reason, is Rosie was the name of Dwight's mother. And he's very proud of that. So Rosie has done a lot of work, a lot of jobs. A lot of it has been classroom projects. And so all the students who take courses, they're using Rosie. The other thing that we do, which we're very happy about and proud, is once a year we run what is called the Rosie Challenge. And the Rosie Challenge is open to all students at the university. And students basically have to come up with a project that they work on and that must use Rosie to solve that.
Okay.
And Dwight comes over every year. He's one of the judges. He puts up all the prizes for it.
Right.
And it is the NVIDIA auditorium, which is in the building, is full. And the finalists are presenting their projects. And it's really incredible, Matt, to see the types of projects that the students are doing. And they're everything from this group of students. And the other thing, it's not just computer science students. There are other engineering students that are involved in this. And one group is saying we're going to design reduced air friction on a race car. Another group is maybe looking at how to read CAT scans or x-rays better. There was a great group last year that did a project on being able to predict food scarcity around the world, saying, look at different things that are happening, weather patterns and all that, and saying, hey, this country over here in a couple of years may experience a food scarcity. So it's impressive what people are doing. And so those are the types of things that Rosie is being used for, that you could you do them on other computers? Perhaps, but it would take, months, if not years, to do that. What Rosie can do very, very quickly.
Well, and what a great testament to where AI can add value to just human life here on the planet Earth, right? Whether we're talking about the race car, that's really cool, improving transportation. Anytime we can improve scanning capabilities, CAT scans, MRIs, whatever it is in that particular space, solving for food scarcity, really, credit to your students as well, for I'm sure they're coming up with these types of programs and these types of projects on their own. So it really kind of shows the breadth of different applications for artificial intelligence, the creativity of the students who are studying at the university, and then to have your work judged by Dwight. Is he the CTO? Is he the Chief Technology Officer?
He's the Executive Vice President of Software Engineering at NVIDIA.
Yeah. So to have that individual coming in and saying and actually doing the judging of those students' projects. I mean, what a great story.
That's right.
And then when you're moving on, think about that. When you're moving on from the university and looking at what comes next in your career, whether that's more education, whether that's going into the workforce, being able to tell a story like that. I mean, what a great message.
And he loves it. And he loves to he brings the prize money, and it's just, he gets a big kick out of it. So.
Yeah, terrific. So talk a little bit about any other major highlights you see flowing out of this AI program. And I know AI and the whole technology has changed significantly in the last 5 years. Anything else that program should be taking credit for that you want to share with our audience?
I think what's happened too is it's expanded so much. I mean, in a couple of ways. Number one is we're seeing AI get to more and more of our degree programs, especially our engineering degree programs. We're seeing faculty in those programs use it. But we've also expanded the offerings that we've had. So initially, like I said, it was a undergraduate BS degree in computer science. We now offer undergraduate minors. We have graduate degree programs. We have a master's degree. We have graduate certificate programs, which have been offered. And now we're really getting into professional education programs. Sure. So, it's non-degree bearing. And what we realize, Matt, is that there's a huge range of understanding and knowledge that people want. And, maybe it's a corporate mid-manager who says, I just want to know what it can do and you want to have something for that. Or someone who's actually going to be using it. And so we're continuing to understand what are the needs of our corporate partners and what do they want. And so the professional education, that's the new biggest thing for us. And we've rolled out a number of courses. We'll be developing more courses in that. But so we've really leveraged a whole suite of things that we're doing with Rosie and with AI.
That's so exciting. And we talk a lot, certainly when we're talking about higher education, about students, about their future careers and so on. And then you think about somebody, careers, as we all know, can last decade upon decade. I'm well into, I guess, the fourth or fifth decade now of my career. You go back to the compact suitcase computer with the keyboard that snapped on the top. And I'm dating myself and probably embarrassing our team here at the Tech Ed Podcast that I even used something like that. But now you think about how all that has evolved. And if I'm somebody that entered the workforce 30, 40 years ago, and I've got technology changing, and now we're in this world of lifelong learning, I think the fact that you're looking at continuing education for somebody who's in the workforce, for your corporate partners to be able to come back to the university and study AI and earn a certificate. What does that feel like? What does that look like? What are they learning?
I think, again, it's a wide variety of things. It may be specific to a field. It may be applications of AI in healthcare, what it can do in that. It may just touch base on capabilities of machine learning. What are the different things it can do?
Sure.
Or to get involved in a little bit more detail about that. So I think that's really what we want, is to touch on a lot of different people. And again, we have a full, if you just want a quick understanding of it, we have a short course here. There's no credit for it.
Sure.
If you want to learn, go into a lot of detail, you can get a graduate certificate. You take 3 courses on it, maybe in a business area. And then if you want to, hey, I really like this, I want to do more, you can get a full master's degree for it.
Right.
So we
all stackable, I assume?
All stackable, yes, that's exactly right. And so that is really the future, is to have a a suite of products that you can say, this is what we offer to you. Where do you see yourself fitting in? And I think that's the future.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, the future certainly of AI education, and I would argue the future of education in general, as technology continues to move so fast. And we'll talk in a little bit about the changing face of higher education. Before we get into that, a couple more thoughts on the whole AI front. And you led on AI, you doubled down on AI with Derek's Hall. Now, in some ways, I would say you're tripling down on AI. I was just on LinkedIn. I think it was over the weekend, maybe last week, and saw a huge announcement that the university made from a leadership standpoint. You added a director of applied AI education responsible for guiding the integration of applied artificial intelligence across academic functions at the university and leading a campus-wide AI steering committee. That comes in the form of Dr. Olga Imas. Tell us about Dr. Imas and the value you think she's going to add to the university.
Yeah, so Olga is a professor in our Department of Biomedical Engineering. So she is not a computer scientist, but she utilizes and understands the power of that tool. She's a great educator. She's been with us a number of years. What we did is over the past year, we got a group of our faculty together, and we called it a Raider Initiative, or RAIDER, where the AI is capitalized. So a little play there.
Love it.
And really to look at how can we incorporate AI into our university. And he really covered a lot of different areas, what we call applied AI in curriculum, which is what are we teaching our students?
Sure.
Applied AI in pedagogy, which is how do we use it to teach our students, better teach our students?
Right.
Applied AI in student success. How can the students use it as a tool, or we use it to help them graduate, to get them through? And then applied AI in operations, right?
Sure.
How can we use it as a tool to operate as a university? And so they really laid out sort of plans for this, and we realized we needed someone to kind of lead that who's dedicated to it. And Olga was on that committee. She's very, very dedicated to this, and she was the natural choice for us to lead us that. So those are the kinds of things that she is going to be doing. She's going to continue to be an educator and a teacher, but this is going to be a big part of her job now, is to lead that. So we're very, very excited about that.
And you should be very excited. Let's dissect that a little bit, because you mentioned two sides of it, I think. And this is just so we're making sure that the message is getting through to the audience. Obviously, we can talk a lot about on the AI side, building that into curriculum, building that into student experience. We talked about building certificate programs and degree programs around that. But then the other part of it in higher education is how are we using AI to do the work of education?
Right.
I'm just such a huge believer at any level of education. The amount of data that we have about our students can really be, in a good way, overwhelming. I mean, in a lot of other market spaces, you would do anything to have the kind of data we have about student performance, extracurricular activities, attendance, aptitudes, test scores, all of this information that we have about our students. And I'm just a huge believer that the future of education is recognizing that not everybody learns the same way.
Yep.
Not everybody's going to benefit from the same style of delivery. And so let's use that data that we have, figure out how our students are learning best, and then catering that educational experience to the students based on that. It sounds like you're getting into some of that already.
We are, and there are a number of tools out there. I mean, you could eventually see it. You know, a student is doing a math problem, and they're stuck on a math problem. And here's a machine learning algorithm that could look at what they've done and actually can say, hey, you've made a mistake here. This is what you should have done. So that's a study tool, right? It's helping students learn. It's helping with their student success. Many of our faculty are doing that, helping them design problems or assess the work that's being done. So that's really a part of it. The other part about it, and you touched upon, is how we operate. So one of the big applications that we have right now that we're using it is on student recruitment and admissions. Here's a student, they're interested in mechanical engineering. Here's some information about that student. Here's where they're from, Racine, Wisconsin. And we've got machine learning programs now that can say, hey, this is what we think it's going to take to get that student. This is the financial aid award that we need to do. Or we think, this student, getting that student on campus is important, or hooking that student up with a faculty member. These are the things that you can do to increase the likelihood of landing that student. And so we expect to see improvements in not only helping us attract students, but on retention of students as well. Like, what are the students struggling with? What are the tools that we can throw out there? So I think all of that is going to change higher education in many ways, and it's already starting to happen. The place that we're using it more probably right now is, like I said, on admissions and recruitment of students. What is it going to take to land students here?
And just to extend that a little bit, number one, the efficiency of being able to target the perfect student, right? Because not MSOE is not going to be perfect for every student. Not every student is going to be perfect for MSOE. And not that it's good or bad or right or wrong, but the more you can dial in on what's right for the student and how are they going to fit at the university, the more likely you are to recruit that person, the more likely they are to have a positive experience.
That's right.
Once they get there, that speaks to the retention part that you talked about. And then being able to think about, as we're spending our recruiting budget, how do we spend that as efficiently as possible and be able to attract the best possible students that are going to be a great fit for the university, and then use that capital maybe in other parts of the work that you're doing? So incredibly brilliant. That way, I had a conversation actually earlier this week with somebody who said to say hi, by the way. We share a friend in the form of Dr. Richard Barnhouse.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Rich at Waukesha County Technical College, who has tremendous admiration, by the way, for your way of thinking about higher education.
It's mutual.
And Rich and I have worked on some really fun things. Rich has been using AI to, for the student scheduling experience, right?
Yeah.
So literally like build different iterations of schedules. So as students, especially in this new world of education where we may be working, we may have other things other than just being on campus every day and going to class, and being able to maximize the matching of faculty and academic talent and availability with the availability of students. It's another application for artificial intelligence. So really, really exciting way to think about it.
It's a new world out there.
Yep, exactly. And we're proud and excited to be forging into it together. On the horizon, as we look to the future, you're talking about how you're using, John, AI now at the university. If we look back, or look forward, I should say, 3 to 5 years from now, what other applications do you see on the horizon?
I think for us, and it's Dwight's dream as well as our dream, is that eventually every engineering graduate who comes out of MSOE knows how to use it, right? We're getting there. We're not quite there yet. We have minors, we have courses, but that's where we want. And it becomes the basis of the fundamentals that you're using, and how can AI help you with that? And eventually expand that beyond just engineering, whether it's nursing or business and other degree programs. That's where we want. We have set our goal with our board that we'll be a recognized leader in applied AI education, right? It's nothing against great fundamental research. There's a lot of great friends who do that, a lot of great institutions. That's not our mission, right? Our mission is applying this technology, and that is really where we can set that apart. And we want to get to a point where people across the country will say, those students who come out of MSOE know how to use that technology here. And that's what we're working, and that's what Olga is really going to help us do that.
And that model isn't really anything new for MSOE, in the sense that, as somebody who's employed your graduates in manufacturing for 30 years now, the truth of the matter is that the university has a reputation for producing students that are, we used to call them shop floor ready, right? So you can recruit a lot of students out of engineering schools, and you can tell the ones that had a hands-on experience, a polytechnic experience, from the ones that had a real theoretical experience in engineering. And there's a place for all of them.
That's right.
But you've always had a reputation of people that come out not just knowing the theory, but putting it to work on day one. And this is just another extension of that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I've heard, since I've been here at MSOE for 8.5 years now. And I've had so many either recruiters or company CEOs who will say to me something like, my company hires engineers from these different schools, all great schools. But there's one thing that sets the MSOE graduate apart, is they hit the ground running. And you can throw a hard problem at them from day one and they'll get it. And that, we take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, and they're comfortable in what we call the Gemba, or the place of action, which in my world of manufacturing was always the shop floor, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of folks that, if you've just learned in a classroom and all of a sudden you're standing out on the manufacturing floor with, safety glasses and earplugs and steel toe shoes, and it's like, they're overwhelmed by it. And MSOE's graduates, I can speak from experience, that's not the case. So you've got them, and again, in my case of manufacturing, but you put students into a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different career pathways, but absolutely the reputation that you have. And I think it's important for us to recognize that that's going to be super valuable, I think, as we move into the future of what higher education looks like. It's certainly what employers are looking for. The enrollment cliff, it almost sounds cliche to talk about it, because everybody knows it's coming. We know that we're going to have, the same number of universities recruiting a smaller number of students for a period of time. So if competition is what competition is, that's going to really force us to be innovative in higher education. Talk about some of those challenges, whether it's demographic or otherwise, that higher education is facing, and what MSOE is doing about it.
I think generally you hit it right. The key is demographics are one of it. I mean, there's, a lower birth rate of students 18 years ago. There's also students questioning whether do I need to go get a 4-year degree?
Right.
You hear about what's happening. Is it worth it? And so for all these different reasons, recruiting students and coming into universities is going to get harder and harder. The wealthy schools with multi-billion dollar endowments, they can survive, but it's going to be a challenging time. And what we've recognized is this is not completely new, right? The demographic cliff has been known about for 18 years now.
Right.
So what MSOE is doing a couple of different things to ensure that we continue to thrive and get stronger. Number one, we're broadening our educational offerings. We're recognizing, I'm still a big believer that a student going to school and learning on campus is just a great experience.
Sure.
And I don't think that's going to change. But I think that if you want to reach a broader group of students, there's some students that just may not work for. Maybe they're at a different part of their life. They're married, right? They're not going to move off the campus. You need to be able to reach those types of students. That's part of it, is broadening, and that's what we're doing with professional education and these master's degree programs that are mentioned. They're all online, and that is a place where online education can work. If you're trying to teach an 18, 19-year-old kid how to do thermodynamics and do that to an online, that's not the easy thing to do.
For sure.
If you're trying to teach a 27-year-old student who already has an undergraduate degree, they can work from home, they want to pick up a master's degree, then it can work quite well. It's just a different motivation, different type of student. So broadening our offerings is number one, but also just what we call expanding our reach. Traditionally, 60% of our students have come from the state of Wisconsin, and we still will recruit heavily to Wisconsin, but we've recognized we've got to go beyond that too.
Sure.
We've got a great thing that we offer here. So a comment that I've heard many times since I started here from maybe people, political leaders, others, said, MSOE, you guys are a hidden gem. And I will say, I like half of that, right?
Yeah,
I love being a gem, but
Right.
no one's going to come to us if we're hidden.
Right.
So, getting out there and marketing and new ways of marketing and reaching a broader group of students, maybe beyond just Wisconsin and getting into the neighboring state. So I think a combination of those, and we'll be fine. But I think that's the right way to do it.
So it's interesting, 60% of your students from Wisconsin. I might have guessed it was even higher than that. So you've got, 4 out of 10 students are coming from out of state.
Yeah, and the majority of them probably would come from the northern Illinois area,
okay.
Right? I mean, the Chicago suburbs are
Sure.
closer to us than many parts of Wisconsin.
Right.
So we do recruit out of that remaining bit, the remaining 40%. That would be the bulk of them. But do we get students? We get them from other Midwest states. We get students here, actually quite a number, who come from around the country to play athletics. And athletics is a very important recruiting tool for us. So a student maybe, living in California who wants to play soccer, and maybe
Right.
they want to get a great education, and perhaps they're maybe, not a D1 level soccer player. I think our students are wonderful soccer players,
Sure.
but we can appeal to that and say, come here, you can get a great education, you can participate in athletics. That's very important for us. Athletics
Absolutely.
plays a huge role for us.
And in the urban campus, and you've got just a beautiful soccer field, actually,
We do.
right there on
You're
the corner of Water Street.
It's on
Juneau,
top
give
of
or
a
take,
parking garage,
Yeah.
right? We have a soccer field built on top of a parking garage.
Exactly.
Very unique.
Yeah, for sure it is. And as you and I were talking earlier, I actually spent 6 years of my life living pretty much right on your campus. The apartment that I
That's
lived in
right.
after I graduated from college was, your radio station was right across the street.
Yeah.
I looked out the window at the baseball team playing out there on the baseball field. And absolutely, that is an interesting aspect. I love it. And you live right in the middle of that, all that activity going on. I know you live right on campus in the president's residence, which is a great experience. Being a celebrity, not just on campus, but obviously carrying a high profile in the city of Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin. Our business journal recently recognized you as a, quote, power player. I would attest to that. Obviously, really leading in so many ways higher education into the future here in Southeast Wisconsin. Tell us what that recognition, how did that come about, and what does it mean to you?
I was really honored to get it. I didn't expect it. There were obviously some really wonderful people on there. It's great to have your work recognized. I mean, I love what I do. I love our institution. I love our faculty staff. I love our students. And so to me, it's a joy doing what I do. And I think it's a great institution. And if I get recognized for that, then that makes it even nicer. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
What are those 1 or 2 things that absolutely kind of drive you day in and day out when you get up in the morning and excited to go about the work that you're doing?
You do this work because you love students. You have to love students. You see the value and the creativity and the hard work that they have. And we just have great groups of students. Do they like to have a little fun? Of course they like to have a little fun, but they're 18, we were all 18 or 19
Indeed.
once, right?
Yeah, and still like to have a little fun, just not as often.
We still like to have a little fun. And so they work hard, they're great, they're grounded, and I love being around them. I love going to watch their sporting events, and I love to watch them succeed. To me, commencement is one of the most special times. I mean, when you're sitting up there and you're watching the students and their family, they're so proud of them, and seeing them walk across that degree and shake their hand, to me, it's like, this is why we do what we do, right? To give these students that great education and know that they're going to go off and be the next Dwight Derricks or whomever, and just contribute and make the world, I give them make the world a better place. And so that's what I like.
Absolutely. One of my very best friends, I'll just mention, his name is John Laundrie. His son, Max, I believe is graduating this spring, has had, and John will has told me that MSOE was exactly the right spot for his third son. His first two went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, obviously different model, much bigger university.
But a great school.
Both great institutions in their own right, for sure. But just the experience to our earlier point, his son, who was at a place in his life that just absolutely flourished at MSOE, and I'm sure being able to sit up on that stage and watch them come across the stage, hand them those diplomas at the end of their journey, which in some ways is just the beginning of their journey in this age of lifelong learning.
That's right.
But it's got to be just incredibly rewarding. So a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
Everybody has their own experience through education. Everybody has their own view of education. What is something that Dr. John Walz would say you think differently about education than most other people do, or that would surprise other people in terms of your paradigm for education?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe I'm a bit of a traditionalist, but as I mentioned, I still think a student going to college and being there in person is a great way to get educated. I think you learn as much outside of the classroom as you learn. In the people that you make, and solving your roommate problems and learning how to deal with that.
Totally.
That's all a part of education,
Absolutely.
Right? There's what you learn in the class and all the other stuff. And you're taking an 18, 19-year-old individual who is still developing in many ways and producing out an adult who's ready to go out in the world. And so I still think coming to campus and dealing with all that is still the greatest form of education. And I never want to get away from that. Do I understand that there's a place for online education? Of course I do. I get that.
Sure.
But I just never hope that we never get away from that model of mom and dad dropping off their son or daughter at school and the emotions of that, and then seeing them when they graduate is still one of the greatest experiences of all. And that's a big part of who we are. So the traditional education, I think, is incredibly valuable still.
Such an interesting observation. And I've said for many, many years during my post-secondary experience, went actually to another solid Milwaukee institution, Marquette University, is where I studied after high school. I've said forever that I learned as much outside of the classroom as I did in. And part of it obviously was the academic side of things, but then interacting with your roommates and solving problems there. Yeah. And I worked a ton when I was in college. I worked for Milwaukee County in the aquatics department. I coached swimming. I was always working. I was always studying as much as I could or had to make it through the journey, and then also trying to fit in a bunch of fun as well, whether that was extracurricular activities, clubs. We didn't have an AI club at that point in time, of course, but others. So important. And so it's interesting to hear you say that in this age of when everybody's talking about virtual learning and technology and remote this and whatever, it's got its place. And certainly for the student, depending upon where they are in their life, want to make those opportunities available to them so that everybody has a chance at a solid higher education. But that campus experience, absolutely important. And it's great that you point that out. One final question for you, John, as we wrap up our time with Dr. John Walz here on the Tech Ed Podcast, president, by the way, of the Milwaukee School of Engineering. I know you grew up in Louisiana, right? North of New Orleans.
That's right.
Or Nolens. Did you call it Nolens when you were there? Yeah.
New Orleans, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. If you were to go back in time to that 15-year-old John Walz, your sophomore in high school, whole life ahead of you, enjoying the much warmer temperatures in Louisiana than we're seeing here in Milwaukee these days. If you could give that young man one piece of advice, John, what would that be?
So that's a great question, and I appreciate that. And I would give them the advice that I give to the entering freshmen. I always address our entering freshmen, and I say, take advantage of these opportunities that you're going to have. You know, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, you're never going to have a time like this ever again in your life. And don't let it just go by, right? And, don't think Wow, I'll learn that eventually. I'll do that because, as you and I both know, it goes by fast. And
sure
you want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have done this or not done that. So take advantage of these these students, and whether you're in high school or in college, you've been given enormous opportunities. And just don't let all that pass you by, right? Stay focused. Have a little fun, but take advantage of that. That's what I would have given to myself. And I wish there were things that I probably wish I'd have done that I didn't, right? I just goofed off a little bit maybe.
Sure.
Should have done less, but that would be it.
I think that's absolutely perfect for a young person that is, sophomore in high school, thinking about their, finishing off their secondary journey and then heading off into what comes after high school, and really, living every one of those moments, being aware of those incredible opportunities. There's a lot of ways that we can just pass time these days, right? I mean, it's almost impossible to be bored because as soon as you are, you can jump on YouTube or jump on TikTok and that fills the time, right? You've got all of these experiences that are available to you during your collegiate journey. Make sure you're watching for those, realizing them as they're coming, and taking advantage of them as they make themselves available to you, because time passes really, really quickly, as it did, by the way, in this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. So an incredible conversation here with Dr. John Walz, the president of the great institution, the Milwaukee School of Engineering. Learned a ton. You're leading. You're doing great things. I know our audience really, really enjoyed this episode, as did I, John. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Matt. It was a real pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you. Very much so.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. It's Matt Kirkner. So wonderful to have you with us. We'll put all of the information from this episode in the show notes. Check out the show notes at techedpodcast/Walz. That's techedpodcast/WALZ, techedpodcast/WALZ. That's where the show notes are going to be. And then check us out on social media. Of course, we're all over social. You can find us on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever you are checking out social media, you will find the Tech Ed Podcast. Follow us there. Be sure to say hello. We would love to hear from you. And until next week, I'm Matt Kirkner, your host. Thanks for being with us.